Hello gamers, Eyeduka is here, and today we're gonna see how far did I got in Throne of Liberty after 1000 hours. You can probably do some of these things a bit faster, but you know, I'm also making videos, so obviously for me it takes a bit more time to actually progress in the game, but that is quite a lot of time, so let's get into it. First thing, let's just maybe look through the storage. A lot of those things are actually almost worthless. Keep that in mind right now. But even 1 or 2 months ago, they were not super expensive. A lot of those things were pretty basic things, basic traits that are not super expensive. And realistically, you couldn't even turn them into Lucent because you just don't have that many extraction stones anyway. And now they're just even cheaper. We do have a couple of tier 2 items as well, but they're also pretty cheap considering that the amount to extract them is double. But that's about it. You look at these numbers, the materials went almost dry while I was upgrading to tier 2, and I have stacked up a little bit of rune fragments, but that's about it. Really not that many things if you look around. Some people this may look like a lot, but to some it's actually not much at all. Did manage to upgrade to 400 slots, which is also shitloads of soul, so that's why I'm way lower right now. And you can see up in the corner right here the amount of currencies that I have. Then looking at the actual gear, the actual character, that's like probably the most important thing anyway. That is almost full tier 2, just to be aware. Not the most ideal items, but this is what I managed to get during that time, and I'm happy with it. It looks pretty decent in my opinion. That's the gear score, the combat power actually, 5885. Basically, we have just this item here, the necklace that is tier 1. I just don't have anything interesting on tier 2 that is really worth replacing. Going through the artifacts, you can look around. You see, we don't actually have that many artifacts right now. I've locked up only the best ones that I have, the best stat combinations, and they are not ideal. Rarely I have something that has 3 stars, and it's not even the best possible stats for me, but that's what it is. At this point, we don't even have every single set completed. So that's, let's say, step number 1. Step number 2 would be to actually get the best possible stats that you really need. So we don't even have the full sets. Keep that in mind. Looking at these, that's the actives, that's not all of them, and then the passives even less. Looking at runes, now we just got them, so obviously we're not gonna have much higher than that. Early 60s, but at least they're purple, so we get purple synergies. Same with these, and same with support. We actually got 1 chaos rune, but it's not really that interesting anyway. So at this point, getting maxed out skills on my main character, that was really not that much of a problem. After the new update, we got a lot of skill books. But I think I even got them before that anyway. And those are the current levels that I have on both of my weapons. 124 on the sword and 130 on my great sword. And if we click on right here, we can even look, the total level is 554. That is actually not bad. I'm really happy that I got to 520 for these 2 skills. They're really good. But going above that, it's going to be really fucking difficult. Basically level 50 on all of them except my main weapons. So that's about it. This is pretty much one of the very grindy parts of the game as well. So I'm going to use this time as an opportunity to make that announcement. I'm going to take a break from Throne of Liberty. I'm not quitting the game yet, but I really need to take a break. 1000 hours is a lot of time for most people anyway. Also, another reason why I'm taking a break from the game, it's not just because I've spent over 1000 hours, but also there are quite a few things that to me don't look very good. Not just me, but many other people also got frustrated with those things. The poor performance of the servers and how over half a year we didn't really had a stable period and people are all the time getting disconnected for various reasons. Nobody really knows, but if there's so many people that actually experience disconnections, it couldn't be the people themselves. And I'm assuming the problem is because of their servers, so it's on their side, not on our side. Also, all those endless bugs that we're experiencing all the time. I haven't really played any game that had so many bugs going out all the time. And I have a theory. The reason why I haven't played a game like that is because usually the game are tested before they're released, and I'm just assuming that they either did very short and not very good testing before they released the game, or didn't even do any testing at all. Having so many bugs all the time is really not only frustrating but also kind of amazing to even be accomplished. Also, of course, this is a bit of a different topic, but the business model, you know, everybody can have their own opinion about that and criticize and love it or hate it. Personally, I think that there are other ways, also better ways to monetize a video game, even though it's a live service game. And honestly, a lot of people agree on that some of the companies running modern games are just very greedy. And I believe this is also one of the cases in Throne and Liberty because of the way the premium currency works and also the way you progress in the game. Pretty much with this comes the grindiness of the game. And again, that's really subjective. You know, some people like to grind, like to do mindless things for hours and hours. I'm really not one of these people. I don't like spending hours and hours of just doing the same repetitive activity. A lot of people can argue that playing video games is a waste of time, but it doesn't have to be. There are many games that actually respect your time, and you can enjoy playing those games without really doing pointless things that are really just not fun and not interesting doing. Whether it's an MMORPG game or any other type of game, it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be the design of MMORPG games in general. I'm actually going to show you games like that in the future, and you'll see what I mean. I'm not just talking out of context. They're really different games with different practices, and personally, I just don't like this one. It's not even the grindest game, and it's already a bit annoying anyway. The fact that you need to spend months before you can actually make a single build is bad enough when you're kind of a person like me that likes to experiment with things, likes to try out different things, and generally speaking, make builds and theory craft. This is really not a game for you. It's just nearly impossible to actually do that. As you've seen, I'm mostly just making builds about my main character, Crusader, and that doesn't mean that this is the only thing I want to play. It's just that fucking difficult to actually do something completely different than that. All the time you're going to be kind of leaning into that one build. I've seen a couple of people that are midway changing their class fundamentally, like changing the weapons, changing the role and everything. And it's just so frustrating. It's like you start all over again and you've wasted like, let's say a month, and all that is pretty much going nowhere because to make the new build, you're going to kind of like start from the beginning. It's so difficult to obtain a single piece of item, and you need for a full set, for a full completely different set, you're gonna need like over 10 different items to put in there just in order to actually experiment and try something else. And this is really kind of like another frustration for me. You know, you could be a type of person that, you know, you don't like to experiment with different builds. You want to just play your main thing. And that's it, end of story. But, you know, like I said, this is subjective. And personally, in the future, I said to myself that kind of a rule to never play any game coming from Amazon Games or even probably NCSoft. If I look at their records, if I look at just the games that they're making, most of them are in that same kind of category of being very grindy and pay to win at the same time. Generally speaking, I'll try to avoid those games. Of course, it's always good to give it a try, experiment a little bit, maybe try a new game, no matter what. But in the long run, I'll probably avoid making that much effort for a game that, in my opinion, doesn't really respect your time as a human being. There are just so many other games where you can just play without any limitations. And most of the time, of course, there is another rule for everybody to keep in mind. Free to play is a very dangerous phrase, okay? Free to play games are far from being free. They're probably the most malicious games you can play, except if they're like some small game. And generally speaking, free to play an MMO in one sentence means disaster. This is my initial expectation. Any game that you have to buy, you have to spend money to buy it and then play it, I would say it's generally better, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to be much better. It could be also, to some extent, a little bit pay to win, but definitely it's going to be much better than this. And along with all these things, there's one thing that just kind of tops it up and it's just making it worse than it already is. It's the way some systems are designed in the game, like the endgame PvP, which is really supposed to be the focus of the game. The game is supposed to be somewhat competitive and have a good amount of PvP. However, all of that PvP is really directly connected to the pay-to-win element, of course. And as a free-to-play player, it's going to be very difficult, if not nearly impossible, to get into endgame PvP and actually enjoy it and actually have a good experience. Another thing that is really connected to this issue is things like alliance, how you can pretty much organize a couple of guilds together, like the strongest guilds going against everybody else. And so once you make that alliance, you're gonna monopolize the whole content. And this has been going on for at least a couple of servers. Not sure about all of them, but definitely going on my server. The top alliance, which is just a couple of guilds, pretty much they just stay on top all the time and nothing's really changing. The way the rewards are distributed, it's basically, the picture is the strong will get stronger and the weak will get weaker over time, and the gap is increasing all the time because every single big fight, they just keep on winning, and they just gain more and more resources, while everybody else on the server will not get anything. This will just increase that gap even more. And the initial things that I was concerned about are actually happening. We're losing more and more people all the time. That new expansion didn't really change that much. It only kind of doubled the players in the first couple of weeks. And now 1 month later, which is an incredibly short period of time, we're close to being the same numbers prior to the expansion, which means the game is losing more people than gaining. This cannot mean anything good for the future of the game. And I saw some people are hating me for saying all these things, trying to defend the game. But realistically, if you're objective enough and look at the state of the game, you see that I'm right about those things. If that was a decent game, it would have been attracting more people. And at some point, it's going to get to such small amounts of players, it's not even going to be practical for the studio and the publisher to keep it running, which is pretty bad for a game that at least it looks pretty good on the surface. Of course, there's other minor issues, but they all just kind of like lead to that one conclusion. One of the other small issues is that they're reusing content all the time. There's not a single dungeon that is actually unique and it uses unique map. There are a couple of dungeons that use small portions of something that is inaccessible outside of the open world, but generally speaking, most of that is used. Same goes for models. They're just reusing models all the time. Another thing that is kind of in the same category is things like field bosses, which are kind of the version of world bosses. And also you do have arch bosses, which are even more unique. They don't seem to be very well designed. They're pretty simple. There's nothing really that special about them. Most of the time it's just a DPS check and that's about it. And as we progress in the game, it's really going to be just more of the same. Regardless of what kind of model they use, it's basic stuff with just the boss doing some things, but those things are really irrelevant for having 100 players attacking him anyway. There are some mechanics, but like I said, they're irrelevant. And there are many other games showing that you could have a completely different approach to that. Even if you have hundreds of people playing together, you can make a boss fight or a big event going on much more engaging. You have multiple different phases to have conditions that need to be accomplished in order to proceed to different phase. None of that is really happening here. It's really just good old DPS and that's about it. Nothing engaging, nothing interesting. And if you think that most games are like that, then maybe you haven't played Guild Wars 2. If you played Guild Wars 2, you know that they have incredibly unique bosses. And it's not an excuse to say that the Guild Wars 2 is just has only horizontal progression. It doesn't really matter at all. The game could have both vertical and horizontal progression, and at the same time, the design of the world bosses doesn't really affect that. You can have it either way. Really not impressed by the world bosses in Throne and Liberty. They're pretty simple and not really engaging, and once you do them a couple of times, it becomes really boring, which is pretty much for the majority of the content that you'll be doing. Yes, you have PvP, which is always interesting. However, the majority of the time you'll be spending doing checklist PvE stuff, which after the first day become pretty boring. You look at this as a comparison, you go on and play a single player game, you play it in 20 hours and you're done with the game. You do everything in one go, you just do a playthrough and that's it, and then you leave it. Would you go and play it again tomorrow? Of course not, because it's just going to be boring. You know everything about it. There's nothing for you to know. And this is pretty much the average experience for MMO games in general, but a more casual approach to any MMO game would simply allow you to not go through that endless boring grind of just getting stuff, just so at some point you'll be able to get a single piece of item that is really not going to have a major impact on your experience. So yes, you have PvP, but 90% of the time you'll be spending doing PvE. And generally speaking, PvE is what is going to actually allow you to progress. There are other games that actually implement this in a much better way, where you do have both PvE and PvP content, and you can actually progress your character from both of the modes independently. But here in Throne and Liberty, in order to get in PvP, you have to spend a lot of time just doing PvE stuff. And once again, in Guild Wars 2, you can just play PvP. You can literally get into PvP 15 minutes after the logging in for the first time, and you don't ever have to get out of PvP in general. And I'm not even talking about the fact that it's all balanced, so you don't have to level up and do anything. But technically, you can level up your character for PvE by doing PvP. So you can do it both ways. You can spend all the time you want in PvE and then in the end get into PvP. But you can also do it the other way around. You can actually spend a lot of time in PvP and then get into PvE endgame. Guild Wars 2 is just a very good example of how you can make everything work very well together and independently at the same time. But anyway, those are just a couple of key points that I wanted to mention that only just helped me make the decision of at least taking a break from the game just to see in what kind of direction it's gonna go. If things keep being the same, then there is a very high chance I'll probably just quit the game at some point, because it's just not really satisfying to simply repeat the same thing over and over again. It's kind of funny, it's kind of weird. I'll be logging in from time to time, not quitting like I said, and I have some other plans for the future as well. So I'm planning on making a new format that is gonna come up soon, but there is gonna be a small twist as well. So stay tuned for more information soon. And that's what I'm gonna say for now. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the comment section below. Thank you for watching and see you soon.